Okay, guys, so success. How do we define success? Because everybody has their own idea of what successful is going to be. And how do we support it in one another? We know how to support it in ourselves. Well, sometimes we don't. Let me take that back. So what is it that we think success is in our minds? And then what's the difference in how we go about obtaining it for ourselves, and more importantly, how we define it in others? So when we try to define success in others, I think the word potential comes to mind, where we say, like, wow, you have all this ability, you have this potential to do these things, but how exactly, like, in what capacity does that come out? Because recently I was dating somebody who, was trying to tell me that they questioned my drive based off of the things that I had accomplished or my game plan to go about, obtaining these things, based off of her ideas for herself. And so we kind of had like a bumping of the heads, because it was like, well, your successes and what you define are different than mine, and we have different backgrounds, we have different walks. So what are we talking about successes? Now, this is not a me versus her sort of thing, but I think in my instance, I was realizing my successes while she was still pursuing hers. And here's how. I own my home. This will be my 3rd year in my home. Never thought I would own a home. That was a huge success that I've already realized. She's still renting, and she wants more things out of life, and I'm sure to have something like living in a home that did not consist, I believe one of her prior relationships and a marriage had her living in a home, but was that her home? This is my home. And so when you have to go through things like getting your own home, that's a major success. And I don't even know if it was ever on my grand scheme of things to obtain in life, but because it came about, it became a success, because it was something that I needed, and then I decided that I wanted. And so I went out and I obtained that. Those were successes. And these are successes, things that people don't see. And you don't have to talk about, yes, I live someplace, but you don't know, like, do we always ask if you rent or own, or, things like that. In order to get that house, I had to raise my credit score, and I won't even give a number. I will just say I had to raise my credit score from the dead. And I mean the absolute dead. That was a success, a wild success. Going back many years before this, when I was a young guy and, looking for work, things like that, I got a job, and I didn't have much experience, and so I went, through, and I got this job through a temp agency, and then they hired me. They had me take the bus way downtown, out of the busing areas. Some of you in Phoenix know how bad those bus systems were. Way down. I had to walk a mile. Got there for like a 10-minute interview, and they all just said, "Yeah, we'd like to hire you." Da da da. Okay, cool. Well, we'll see you Monday. Walked back a mile, caught the bus, all that stuff. But that was a success, and my goals were minor. Let me see if I can stay here a year. I made it a year. And because I had vacation, benefits, and all that, well, if you stay 2 years, you get another week of vacation. Let me see if I can stay 2 years. I ended up staying 10 years. I stayed for enough to get like 3 or 4 weeks vacation. I became fully vested in my 401k. I became not only a proficient line operator, because I started as a temp. I didn't even know how the tape gun worked. It was all over the place. But got from there to a proficient line operator, and then they needed quality control. And so one day they were going through all of everybody's boxes because we had this massive rejection from the customer. And the one person who had their pieces not in a rejected state were mine. And so I became a quality control inspector. Ultimately, I became the supervisor of that department. Successes. When I left that company, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And so what did I do? I just started hustling on my own. I took money that I had, bought some equipment, and for those who knew me way back when, I started making dog tags. And it was just my own independent hustle. I started working on my t-shirts, working more on my music, things like that. I took jobs here and there bouncing, at clubs and things like that. Successes. These were small successes. And in a greater scale, they were larger successes. They gave me knowledge about business, about myself, things like that I could have never paid for in classes to learn. So I'm just giving you a timeline. So I'm skipping down, and then as those jobs kind of dissipated off, I did manage some of the clubs, things like that. But again, successes. And then just doing the parenting that I did. Successes. Now, do we have stumbles and hiccups along these ways? Like, did I do everything perfectly? No. One of the jobs that when I was a manager, I got fired from. So there was something to be said about that. Parenting. Of course we make mistakes. At one point, I owned a co-owned a football team that I was a part of. We didn't have a great record for the 3 years, not even close. But we did community events. We did things that a lot of other teams weren't doing. We did things with the money that came in, donations to St. Mary's Food Bank. We donated at the battered women's shelters. A lot of you already know the story, but these are successes. These were successes because to this day, there's guys who were on those teams who still talk about the influence that being on that team had. And it wasn't me. It wasn't me. It was the totality of everybody supporting these ideas. That was a wild success. And so when I hear somebody telling me that, her goals were she wanted to start a business, she wanted to do t-shirts, a lot of things that I've already done. And I was like, I got you. I'll support you. I'll tell you what I know about all that. But your idea of success and mine are different. But you don't question my drive. Because I've done things that you're still not even fathoming having to do or go through. And that's fine. We're all at our own pace. But how do we define success? And then how do we support it in other people? So the discussion that we had, it was kind of short-lived because it was, one of those things that you can quit your job sort of thing and you can pursue the things that's great for you. If you want to do that and that's where you will be successful and happy, that's great. But I know a different walk, and I remember what it was like being homeless. So my scope of what success is shrouded in stability. And it's not to say that somebody doing it on their own can't be stable and realize wild successes and things like that. But again, what are we saying about how we define successes and support other people in pursuing theirs? The success for me at this point is paying this mortgage down, home improvements, making sure that it's a peaceful and productive environment in which, yes, I can start to pursue other things. Now, this is the home where I have my equipment, where I go and, plan workouts, and then take the equipment that's in my house to disclose locations and work out with people. Shout out to Nathaniel Burns and everyone else who's ever been part of Impact. There's successes that are transferred out of the house, but they are created in it. This is where I practice, and my daughter practices, our arts, spoken word. That, this is where I've written music. Shout out to Ryan Wenzel for working on that music. And again, Urban Beans for the place that I go to practice and perform with my daughter, the spoken word and poetry and her music, things like that. These are successes that people don't see. And when you're only looking at, I want to be a CEO of my own company, I want a jet, I want, millions of dollars, I want to have 3 people working for me so I don't have to work and I could just call and check in and see how the numbers are doing and everything else. Those aren't everybody's successes. And that's okay. But how do we define success, not only for ourselves, but then how do we define it, or at least support it, into other people's? Because you really can't define what somebody else's success is going to be, but you certainly can support it in the way that they presented to you what they feel success is. So what is success? To the stay-at-home parent, getting your kids to school every day and home, homework done, completed, dinner made, activities, good night's sleep, keep them healthy, keep them happy. I did that. I had successes in that. Now with successes also come failure. There's balance. So, but I did that. Pulling yourself up from obscurity. Possibly pulling yourself out of addiction, pulling yourself out of bad relationships, getting yourself out of crummy jobs, all of those things, putting yourself back in school. If it's too much, withdrawing yourself from school. Whatever it is that brings you some sort of happiness and an amount of productivity in a positive way is a success. But if you have to withdraw from school and somebody looks at it as, oh, you're quitting? Well, they can't fathom and they can't understand what it is that you have to do to make that successful, or how that's a success to you. So how do we define it in other people? We have to see what they will deem a success for themselves and support that. Now you can say, are you sure you need to quit school? Are you sure that's what you're going to cook for your kids for dinner? Are you sure you can find another job in this climate? Yes, certainly. Maybe those are supportive questions. Have they thought this through? If they say yes, then okay, cool. But when you question someone else's drive, you are extremely short-sighted, not only for their vision, but also for your own. Because what it says is you're not flexible in understanding that there are detours, there are potholes, pitfalls, forks in the road, things that will somehow take you out of the way of getting to that success. It's not always a straight line. Very rarely does somebody have that straight line to success. And it's supposed to be that way. These are growing pains. These are learning curves. These are things along those lines. So let me take this off here because I feel like the sun is going to cook my phone. So I say all that just to say, and it's still in the sun. How are we defining somebody else's? A lot of times we can't even define our own, and those are okay. Those are okay moments to have, to not be absolutely sure. But again, how do we define success in what we want, and then how do we define it in others? We shouldn't really be trying to define it in others. We should be looking at how we support it in others. Another example, and I'm running long-winded. Look at fitness. It should be a wonderful community of people all over the world that are dead. I dropped off. Keeping themselves not only healthy, but fit as well. Health and fitness, two different things, but they are a wonderful marriage. But what do we see? And it's happened to me. Posted some videos on push-ups, and I got, people saying, well, your form is bad, or it's easy to do that many with poor technique. Or what do we see? Oh, he skipped leg day, or look at her, she shouldn't be wearing that. Maybe the success is that she just lost 13 pounds and is feeling extremely good about herself. Maybe the fact of the matter is he has... Let me keep trying this. I apologize. My phone, the storage was full. Too much content, but that's a success in itself. So getting back. So somebody with skinny legs in the gym, or you see that person that's using the equipment wrong, and what does everybody do? They're filming it and ha-haing at it and things like that. Why not support what we might see as what they deem as a success? Somebody pulls up in that clunker of a car, but it's their first car and they're proud to roll it. That's a success to them. Support that. Rather than say, you know, look at your car, blah blah blah, your shoes, anything. The person who, you know, we've seen that woman who, you know, people say like, she left the house in that. Again, maybe she just lost a bunch of weight. Maybe she's going through something where this is her first time out, and that's what she has to go out and celebrate in. Why do we care? Because the more we detract from somebody else's successes, what headspace are we in? If we're not being supportive, what headspace are we in? We always talk about, you know, thanking the haters and blah, 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 this and that. Well, shouldn't they thank you then? Thank you for, you know, detracting from what I'm doing and I'm still doing it anyways. Now who's the hater? So, success is going to be defined by the person experiencing it. And it might not be in the large pockets that, you know, we think that it should be happening for them or how we would perceive it for ourselves. But that's not our business. Our business end of things is to support it if that's where we're at, if that's where we're at with the person. If we don't vibe that way, or that's not how we feel about it, don't say anything. I understand the angle, like I'm just being supportive. Yeah, a lot of people, well, hey, why don't you lose some weight? You know, I'm just being supportive. You know, or, you know, you could really do better with your life. I'm just being supportive. Yeah, sometimes it is in a supportive nature, but we really got to be, you know, be careful when we're towing that line and how we say it and how we determine that somebody else isn't as driven. Because when I did the numbers, when I did the tail of the tape from this person telling me about my drive and what successes are, this would have been like, this would have been a complete mismatch. And I don't like going there. But when I'm thinking about my drive, my success, things like that, just starting off, I'm paying off my own generational wealth and equity, and you're paying off somebody else's. I live in a house, you live in an apartment. And I don't even like going there. I've been a very active participant in the community, and not for just self grandeur or for, you know, for self reward or pay or anything like that. Community events, I find those to be wildly successful. And if you're trying to put yourself out there for business purposes, that's great. But again, our definitions of success are wildly different. So again, how we want it for ourselves and how we are willing to spin it onto someone else is a slippery slope. Be careful, guys. Be careful how you project things, because again, it can backfire, and that's kind of what it did in this instance. Because the conversation that I had and the things that I brought up were just you can't talk them down. I'm not in debt. They were. Wildly. I own my car outright. They don't. And upside down in it. You know, my job. And while we can lament about our jobs, it's a success to get up and go to it every day. Especially those of us who aren't like living the dream, but we go and make the success that it is every time we punch in and punch out. It's a success that I can go to my doctor or the pharmacy and show them this medical card that says I have insurance. That's a success. It's a success to go see that you're saving money. Success. What are you telling me about my drive? You don't know enough. If people don't know enough about you, how do they tell you these things? So I don't want this just to be about me, but in totality, how do we define success, and then for ourselves, and then obtain it, and then how do we support it in others? But I use the example of somebody challenging my drive and things like that because it's relevant, and especially because if they don't know you, how are they going to tell you? That people can certainly advise you on how to get certain things or get places, but to question your drive in it is kind of funky. It's a kind of funky thing to do. It takes a bit of audacity, especially when you haven't realized your own successes and are just way behind. Because again, I can spin it back. Well, how come you don't have this, or how come you don't have that, or and where does it get us? So I just went with my own successes, that I can go to the dentist, and my kids have health coverage too, and things like those are successes that, even though I'm not with my children's mother, we get along very well now. Those are successes, because a couple years ago we didn't. And if I'm doing this tale of the tape again, she's not doing too good with her baby's dad. Successes. It's not just business. It's not just an LLC. It's not an EIN. It's not. It's about being a DAD. Get along with the MOM. It's about purchasing and building your HOME. It's not always just 401ks and things like that. They help. But inside, that weight loss, your cholesterol numbers coming down, the ability to walk around the block twice without being winded, and that's only going to get better. Learning things that you didn't think you could at either a particular age stage, or that class was just going to be too hard, and your second or third time taking it, it's finally sticking. There's so many successes. Just like there's lessons in everything, successes can just come in every step you take. It's a success. There's people dropping like flies around us daily, and I don't want to be like morbid about it, but it's true that we're still walking and breathing and living through this pandemic. Success. With or without the vaccine, success. Some of it might be luck, but so is success. A lot of people, right place, right time. So I'm going to leave it at that, because I am extremely chatty today. But just keep in mind, on the way we define success for ourselves and then go about obtaining it is different than how we should be supporting it for other people. Listen to what they want to say as far as their game plan. Try to see their vision, and then go from there and just support it. Lend honest, constructive criticism, and be that good friend, or that good spouse, or that good family member, or that good stranger. Success. That in itself is the success. Peace, love, unity, solidarity.